It's almost unheard of these days, but Brent Carver's giant Kootenay family was typical for the 1950s. Carver was one of 7 kids, born in 1951 in Cranbrook. His mother was a clerk and his father a logging truck driver. Cranbrook was a rough and tumble logging town back then, half the size it is now, and just big enough to have a community theater. And that's where Carver gravitated. He learned to sing alongside his father, who played guitar, and he honed his voice in school choirs and churches. Soon he began to dream of a career on the stage. So he enrolled in the drama program at the University of British Columbia, even landing a small part on the popular Canadian television show The Beachcombers.
Gone. He's gone. She's gone. The whole world is gone except me, and I lose my mind.
But it was singing and musical theater where Carver shined most. In the 80s, he forged his reputation in Stratford, Ontario, the epicenter of Canadian theater at the time, appearing in everything from cabaret to a rock version of Hamlet. But it was a slog. By the 90s, Carver was still toiling from job to job, eking out a living in Canadian theater, when he was finally noticed by a Broadway producer. He was offered a role as an understudy in Kiss of the Spider-Woman, an Oscar-winning film that was turned into a Broadway musical. He would back up one of the leads and take over if the actor was too ill to sing. And as fate would have it, the first choice for one of the lead roles bowed out, and Carver was tapped for the part of Melina. The show opened on Broadway in the spring of 1992 with Brent Carver as its lead. Kiss of the Spider-Woman was a massive hit, amassing 11 Tony nominations. Brent Carver, the Kootenay kid from the big family, was nominated for Best Lead Actor in a Musical. And you can probably guess where this ends.
The 1993 Tony Award goes to Brent Carver, Kiss of the Spider-Woman.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Scott, and this is The Headwaters, brought to you by Columbia Basin Trust. On this podcast, we're going to meet people in the Columbia Basin who dare to dream the impossible dream. It's a podcast dedicated to Kootenay musicians and the people who help them climb up on that stage. We're very musical in our lovely little corner of the world. We host one of the biggest raves in the country, the Shambhala Music Festival. And this is where local artists like Frazee Ford, Sean Hook, Dean Brody, and Kaisa got their start, to name just a few. Where it began for many of them was a small school where thousands of musicians have honed their craft. The Selkirk College Contemporary Music and Technology Program in Nelson. Tara Cunningham has been poking around Selkirk and has a story to tell. So Tara, what is the contemporary music program all about?
Selkirk College has the only contemporary music school in Western Canada.
Like there's not even one in Vancouver or Calgary?
No, there's not. Not one that does both performance and technology.
Huh.
And it's only one of 3 in the country. But I should tell you before we go on that my daughter Neva graduated from the program this past spring. That's her on the cello.
Oh, proud mama.
You better believe it.
And the cello, I thought this was a contemporary music program. Isn't the cello primarily an orchestral instrument?
Yeah, the cello is definitely an important part of an orchestra, but Neva has not liked classical music at all. She realized that cellos are used in contemporary music, and so she applied to Selkirk, and they accepted her. I think she's one of the first cellos in the program.
Huh, so it's kind of a modern take on the cello.
Yeah, and a lot of the other students, usually they have some sort of knowledge of guitar or keyboards or maybe some singing, and they might have technical or songwriting skills. And they want to become professional musicians or composers, and so Selkirk helps them get there.
How does the college help them get there?
What I mean by that is that they pride themselves on being current. They're up to date on what's going on now in music. Let's listen to Melody Dacian. She's the chair of the School of the Arts at Selkirk, and she's also a professional musician herself.
Most post-secondary music institutions offer education in classical music and jazz, but we're basically everything but that. If a person is interested in becoming a classical musician, a symphonic musician, this is not the program for you. But if you want to shred on guitar, this is it.
You mean you teach music that students listen to in their earbuds?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so we are not just talking about things that we used to do in the past. The music instructors in this program are all performing, recording, and it's important to us that they maintain that as they have their music instruction going on at the same time. So, a lot of our instructors will teach throughout the school year, and then after we wrap up the school year, they'll go on tour or they will record a new album. That makes an atmosphere where we are all fellow musicians. We're not just teachers and students, but we're fellow musicians of different age and experience.
That's what I found really interesting about this, Mitch.
What's that?
Well, all of the teachers I spoke with at the college are working on their own projects. Multiple teachers have Juno nominations or they've been part of Grammy-nominated bands.
Well, that's big-time stuff.
It really is, because sometimes the students play or sing along on those albums, so it's a very inclusive environment. The curriculum is modeled after the prestigious Berklee College of Music in Boston. And in fact, the Selkirk program was started by Berklee grads, and Selkirk students can transfer the credits directly to Berklee. So that's another really big draw of the program.
Did you take in some of the class time?
Yes, I did. Let's head to Shambhala Music Hall, where a lot of the instruction and the shows happen. For anyone who's never been there, it's an 80-seat modern performance space. It has professional stage and lighting and sound equipment.
Incredible theater.
It really is. It's basically an environment students can expect when they head into the music business.
So you definitely do need a new battery in your guitar. Yeah, because this pickup is working. We've got this happening, so.
So we watch the horizon as it catches fire. Promise every day without a trace of anger.
Okay.
At the Shambhala Music Hall, we meet up with Sapphire Guthrie. Yes. Sapphire's 19. She was born in Mexico, and she moved to Nelson when she was a little kid. Like most of the students in the program, music has always been a part of her life.
I was 7 when I first started playing ukulele. Just a family friend. They had a teenage daughter. She started teaching me. So I'd go over to her house every week. But I've been singing long before that. My mom says that I was singing since I was like 2, probably.
So we watch the horizon as it catches fire.
Sapphire is a pretty typical student. Young, musically talented. She sang in the Corazon Choir in Nelson.
The Corazon Choir makes me cry every time I see them. So good.
I know, me too. And Sapphire also plays several instruments. She wants some kind of career in music, though she's not sure what that looks like yet. Although she already teaches some music lessons on the side. So, Mitch, I asked her the dreaded question every teenager hates.
Oh, what's that?
So, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Gross.
The goal would be to be able to sustain myself, have a comfortable living just in music. And I'm not tied to being just a performer or just a songwriter. I'm open to a lot of things because there are so many doors in this industry, and I didn't realize how many until I started this program, actually, which is very cool.
Wow. Articulate teen.
I know, isn't she?
How does Selkirk train Sapphire and the other students for the competitive world of contemporary music?
It's known to be an intense 2-year program, but it has these small, intimate class sizes, which the students really enjoy. They usually rotate playing in various ensembles with each other. They get at least an hour of private instruction a week, and they have some really neat classes in things like ear training and arranging and computers.
I'm not necessarily just learning guitar. I'm learning all these other things about music.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to learn things like film scoring even. And also you'll get lots of production and business knowledge too.
Which is a tough business to get a foothold in.
Yeah, very much so. While I was there, Emily Millard was teaching. Emily graduated from the program 17 years ago. She worked as a professional musician and composer for all of those years, and then she just recently returned to teach at Selkirk. We asked her what her goal was with students like Sapphire.
My goal would be, that's a really good question. I want to be a support. So I want to highlight what people are doing really well at and strengthen them in the ways that they want to be strengthened. So with my vocalists that I teach one-on-one, we have a conversation at the beginning of the term. What do you want? What are your goals? Awesome. I have just a little bit of feedback on the solo arrangement of this song. Are you playing this solo in your showcase or not?
I'm not playing this in my showcase.
Oh, you're not. It just occurred to me that I agree that what's working really well in this song are the dynamics that are. I would say, having experienced this program as a student, I think that being at a small school, you get a lot of time with your instructors. You're going to end up playing in a band with your instructors. You're going to end up playing at venues in town with your peers and with your instructors. And I remember, when I was a student, we would just always be jamming as well, on the weekend. Like, where are we getting together to just play?
I've seen Selkirk students playing all over the place in the Kootenays.
Yeah, there are a surprising number of live venues here. You can see students playing or alumni playing everywhere.
How about in the big world?
Well, some of them really do make it big. You mentioned a couple of the well-known alumni off the top. Kai's is probably the most famous. She graduated in 2009, and a few years later, she filmed this amazing video on the streets of New York.
I checked it out. It's wild, crazy, it's so cool.
I know, it went viral, and it was done in one take, and it was for a song called Hideaway, which it got her on the David Letterman show, and it really launched her career.
Crazy.
I know. There's also Frazee Ford. She is formerly of the band The Be Good Tanyas, and she now has a vibrant solo career.
Tell me more about that.
There are former students making a living in Nashville, working as touring musicians or songwriters. One, in fact, toured with ZZ Top and Tanya Tucker.
Wow.
Selkirk grads are in the music business all over the place. So the school is about giving them the skills to do that, and also a lifelong love of music, even if that means playing part-time while they take on other careers.
They have a year-end showcase we could all check out, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's a very big deal for the students. At the end of their final year, they get to play their music in front of an audience with a full band for about 30 minutes. I went to see Sapphire showcase in the spring at the music hall. And while people were filing in, I wandered backstage to talk to her before her show. How do you feel right now?
I feel excited. I think that's the root of all my emotions right now, if I was going to pin them down. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm excited. I'm grateful. Like, this is insane, Lots of us have been waiting 2-3 years for these shows, So I'm just pretty over the moon. I'm Sapphire. You already know that. I'm going to play an original song. It's called Secrets She Holds.
So, how'd she do?
Oh, Mitch, she killed it. The music was beautiful, and it was original, and every seat in the house was taken.
Standing room only.
There was standing room only, because the community supports everything that the kids seem to do here. It seems certain that she is going to have a career in music. So as one final question, I asked her if she feels prepared. Does she think Selkirk Contemporary Music training was worth it?
Yeah, I do. And even if that's just the amount of self-exploration and discovery that I've had here that I wouldn't have had any other way, yes, absolutely worth it. And I'm not sure if anyone leaves a post-secondary institution in their field truly like, oh, I got this. I'm done. We're good. But am I confident that I know how to pave my way from here on? Yes, I think so. No heaven above.
Nice. Sapphire performing live at her final Selkirk College showcase. So if you do go to school and you do become a musician, where do you get that guitar or cello with perfect pitch? Yeah, you can go to a music store and grab one off the display wall. Or if you're lucky, you can have one custom built for you by a luthier. A luthier is a person who builds and repairs stringed instruments. And we have a number of them in the Kootenays, as Graham Tracy found out.
This is some maple that I logged on my property out in Chilliwack 15 years ago.
Michael Hayden sands a mandolin at his shop near Creston. It's not quite complete, but already looks like a work of art.
I built one a few years ago. It's on my website, and this fellow just, that's what he wanted, had to have. So I had to go hunting through all my wood. It was quite a job to find this set of nice quilted maple in my stash.
Finding perfect wood to build an instrument has been a lifelong pursuit for Hayden.
The wood I'm using is probably minimum of 20 years old, and some of it is up to 100 years old. That wood that I've been gathering from other builders, from old furniture makers. You're always got your ear to the ground looking for, oh, you've got some old wood? Oh, I'll come and look. Because seasoned wood is what really makes the best instrument.
Hayden would know. He's a master luthier who's been building stringed instruments for half a century, since he was a teenager.
I moved to a commune on the Gulf Islands when I was 17, and they were all instrument makers. So I lived there for a while and just thought this was the lifestyle. This is what I want to do.
Hayden was a touring musician, playing mostly in bluegrass bands. He discovered there were very few luthiers in Canada, so he set up a shop.
It actually wasn't that difficult back then because we're talking 50 years ago. There were few people building instruments. There was Martin and Gibson, the factories. There weren't a lot of hand makers. And it was almost instant. As soon as I started building instruments, people were coming to me because they wanted something a little different.
Word spread about Hayden's attention to detail and craftsmanship, largely among fellow musicians. He could build anything with strings, ouds to ukuleles, but specialized in mandolins, a favored instrument of his fellow bluegrass players.
That's really how I got going with the mandolins, mainly, was just being there with them. And there weren't that many people making handmade mandolins at that point. So the orders started just coming in, and it became 30 years of mandolins. Couldn't stop it. These are some of my very early instruments. That is the first thing I made when I was 17 on Galiano Island with a pocket knife, basically, and not much else. But then I built a lot of these. This is the Appalachian dulcimer. These were very popular back in the 70s in Vancouver in particular. To this day, I love to get all the details of a custom order well ahead of building it so that I can virtually visualize it in my head.
Word spread. Famous players like Jonathan Reichman, Ry Cooder, and Guy Clark became customers. Serious musicians began to seek out the Hayden sound.
Mainly when it comes down to it, I build the best I can so that the instrument is open, responsive, balanced, sweet, but it's up to them at that point then to go, okay, this thing is like an open book. So I put my personality in to make it as rich of a sounding instrument as I would love to play.
Hayden doesn't play much himself or tour anymore. At 68, he's slowing down, but
I'm starting to realize at this point that I don't think luthiers ever really quit. I've spent most of my adult life working in the shop with wood, and I love it, so why would I quit?
So I'm just working on this bass bar right now, carving it down.
An hour down the highway, Pauline Dawson works on a viola in her Cranbrook shop. Dawson is part of a younger generation of luthiers. Like Michael Hayden, she was taken by the craft at an early age.
I must have been 3.5 or 4, and I was watching Sesame Street on TV, and I saw a little girl playing the violin, and I told my mom, I want to do that. And she thought I meant that I wanted to learn how to play violin, but I meant I couldn't articulate that I wanted to learn how to make that thing. I wanted to do that. And so she put me in violin lessons, and I thought, okay. And so eventually, I came back to my dream.
That dream was becoming an instrument maker. Pauline Dawson trained as a nurse, but a decade ago decided to follow her passion and enrolled in a violin-making course in Utah. She restored violins in Wisconsin and now has struck out on her own, repairing and building instruments.
You have to hustle, and you have to go down some diverse routes, and I think a lot of people will say you have to pay your dues and get your practice and your learning in, and it never stops, though, as well. There's always a new technique, there's a different way of doing things. I do things differently now than I did 2 years ago. But yeah, you're always trying to trend towards the perfect, so...
Dawson's specialty is violins, which she crafts with such detail she gathers and cures her own stain. She's joined a centuries-old profession in violin making, rooted in Europe.
If you go somewhere like Mittenwald, or if you go to France, or of course Italy, there are more makers than you can shake a stick at there. And I think if they have the funds, a lot of them want to go to some place like the States or here because we're not so saturated. I think we're trying in Canada. We're getting there slowly.
Pauline Dawson also doesn't play her instrument, but will reluctantly run through scales if pressed by a visiting journalist. Like Michael Hayden, she is all about the craft of building.
There are things that clearly have value. I mean, something a doctor does, or a teacher, or you need farmers to grow your food. And I like to think that in a small way, we're all working for a world where you can elevate the arts, and this is important. And if other people are appreciating it, that really gives me joy, because music is such a universal language. There.
We leave our final word with someone who discovered early on that he was going to do something musical with his life, that he absolutely had to.
It just gave meaning to things. It gave community to things. I mean, I was an only child, grew up in a rural area. So going to music and feeling that energy and the sense of community, that was always the bands that really got me, was when the fans were all in it, you know? It's amazing. As soon as I tapped into that, then it just felt like I had a community, really.
Paul Heinrichs plays in a band called the Heavy Lighters. That's them there. He also manages a Kootenay band named Shred Kelly. You might have heard of them. They tour the world. And Heinrichs also books shows and runs the Caslo Jazz Festival. His life is all about music in the basin.
Best part of being a musician in the Kootenays is this sense of community, how intertwined everybody is, so be it the players that play in various projects, the venues that book them, the festival producers. Everybody knows each other. I think the key to being a successful musician, and success is defined in a lot of different ways. I think everybody has their own definition of success. But if you want it to be your primary source of income, the thing that you spend most of your time doing, if it's your passion, then ultimately it comes down to creating, and you have to constantly be creating. I don't know that that's exclusive to the Kootenays, but around here, to make a living at it, you have to tour, you have to gig, you have to find opportunities to reach an audience. And that is kind of a double-edged sword. It's hard because we're in a small rural area, but luckily we are in a very supportive area. So there's a lot of venues or presenters. The arts and culture sector is quite vibrant, thriving. You know, I think it has its ups and downs, but really you have to get yourself out there. You have to find those opportunities, recognize the opportunities, and then take the chance.
that's our podcast about music, which wouldn't happen without the Columbia Basin Trust, a tremendous supporter of music and the arts in the Kootenays. To find out more, go to ourtrust.org. Jesse Lee is a professional musician who does all of our original music. We can't thank him enough for his fabulous work. I'm Mitchell Scott. Thanks for listening to the Headwaters. To find out more about our podcast, go to headwaterspodcast.com.